Okay, I think this is my last painting for the little series I have going on of my old deceased pets dressed as Victorian-era humans. This one is probably one of the only ones I will ever do of the stray cats. We've fed many different stray cats throughout the years, so I wanted to just pick one. And the one I had the most memories and interaction with was this one half-blind mama cat who came by sometimes. I know I named her at one point, but I don't remember exactly what it was, because my family just called her Psycho Mama Cat because once she attacked the crap out of our dog. Granted, it was only because, at the time, she had just given birth, like a day prior, and the baby was just a few feet away in our backyard shed, so it makes sense she was a little protective. She was a skinny little thing with an eye infection on her right eye, similar to my current cat Rue, who was also a mama cat at one point. So if I had a nickel for every emaciated mama cat I've had with an infected eye that we took care of, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. And like Rue, the infection never really healed, leaving her half blind, but unlike Rue, it was an actual issue for an outside cat to not be able to see super well, as they rely a lot on their eyes, especially at night. Another reason I didn't personally name her was because I think she might have actually been someone else's outside cat. I say that because one day, we had gotten her a flea collar because she seemed to be really itchy and being bothered by them, but a day or two after we put it on her, she came back with the collar still on, but with a name and phone number that wasn't ours written on it. It said Mimi, so that's what I just remember her name being, but as far as I was concerned, she was more of our cat than theirs. We fed her and she stayed mostly at our house, even feeling comfortable enough to have her babies there, and if this person cared so much to claim ownership of her, maybe she should have fed her more and looked after her eye. Granted, it's kind of hypocritical for me to say that, because we also didn't get her to a vet for her eye. We didn't have the money to afford it, and that could very well be the case for the other owner of the cat, but she did spend most of her time with us, and she basically had free reign and ownership of our backyard shed. I remember her dad even installing a cat door for them to get into the shed. I don't remember ever actually calling the number, so maybe those people were nice. I just always felt combative because I was guilty and worried I was basically stealing someone else's cat. We never trapped her on our property or anything. She was free to go, but since she spent so much time with us, I think I was subconsciously worried that I took her away from someone. But anyway, she only ever had a single kitten, probably because she was so small and skinny. But because of that, we named the little boy kitten Uno, which was fitting, not only because he was a singular baby kitten, but also because right around that time in high school, I started carrying around a pack of Uno cards to play when class had a break or was over early, which wasn't very often, but there was a time in I think sophomore year where our school got hacked and we couldn't use the Wi-Fi for like a month, and I had back-to-back online learning classes, so for 2 hours I just kind of twiddled my thumbs, waiting for the internet to come back. In that time, I played so much Uno with my classmates. It was the first time I really initiated conversations and interacted with people I didn't know so well. I remember even stacking houses of cards. It was hard and I had to be perfectly still, but I once built one with the entire Uno deck I had on hand. And this is kind of an unrelated memory, but as a child, before our old small-town school shut down due to a lack of funding, my twin brother and I had a friend whose sister was always mean to me. I remember for some reason we were doing like a wrestling tournament thing or something on their trampoline in their backyard, and since she was the only other girl, she was my opponent, only she was like 2 or 3 years my senior, and when you're like 8, that's quite a difference in size. And I still remember it because after I was sad and crying because it was kind of scary to basically give someone the permission to beat you up, but that's not the part I actually remember, so I'm guessing it wasn't too bad. What I remember was sitting on our porch, waiting for my brother to finish playing and come back home, and she came up to me and insisted that my stuffed animal was actually her little sister's. And at the time, and honestly until I was like 16, I had my little emotional support stuffed animals, and I was very connected to these little guys. And the idea of it being stolen from me by a bully made me cry even more, but because I was sobbing so much, she eventually backed off and said she was mistaken, but it's the most vivid memory of her I had. I only mention this because the only next time I ever saw her was in this online class, and at that point, she had actually been on Dr. Phil, and it was like literally all our school would talk about for a few days. I think even my dad asked if I was going to watch the episode, and I think she ended up being one of those teens who was sent to that questionable ranch, which I heard was actually pretty grueling and cruel. When she came back, she was much more quiet-spoken and pleasant to talk to, but that could have just been because she'd gotten older and a bit smarter since then. She seemed to just be keeping her head down and getting caught up on the classes she missed by doing them online, as you could really go at your own pace that way, and it's why I really thrived in such classes. I always kind of wondered what happened to her, and if she was okay at that rehabilitation ranch thing. Again, a few years later, I learned that it wasn't actually the best place to try and rehabilitate someone. I'm a firm believer in the philosophy that punishments don't rehabilitate people, compassion does. But yeah, that was a side tangent only loosely connected to what I was talking about. But yeah, Uno was the cat I had a breakdown over, constantly worrying about his death and demise, because I had watched him grow up ever since he was a kitten, with his eyes still shut, as a barely conscious speck. And like I said before, he did eventually go missing, as did his mom, went missing a little bit before him. All of our outside cats went missing at some point, hence me never being able to get the anxiety of his death out of my head, and I guess for good reason, because he did go missing. But I was a teenager in my parents' house, so it's not like I could really challenge them on a decision and responsibility as big as accepting another cat. But I was always frustrated at my father, as he was the one who had put the ground rules of only 2 indoor cats in place. But a lot of the indifference for the outside cats and strays was because he grew up on a farm, I think a sheep farm, where he had to really detach himself from the animals they raised. That being said, behind a strict and scary exterior, he really did care, and he loved those cats. He even named one of the old stray cats from when we used to live back in that small town, and you could tell he named it and not me, because his name was just Dave. And him and my brother were also part of the name choosing of our childhood dog, who was the only still currently alive childhood pet, who we named Jack. So they have a thing for just giving animals the most random human names. He loved Dave, and he loved Uno. He even bought Uno a heated cat house for winter, which the cat really did use and like quite a bit. And like I said, he was the one who had made the cat door into the shed for them. And when the mama cat gave birth and started nursing, he had even gotten her canned cat food. He really did care about them, but would play it off when we mentioned him caring. And I think that was basically part of his parenting style with me too. Strict rules that weren't always in my best interest, like being hell-bent on me getting a driver's license. But it turns out I have panic attacks behind the wheel, and I would be a risk to others on the road, and myself, or him making me get a retail job, which I'm grateful for the experience, but also was just not the job for me, and was a nightmare, especially for my particular headspace, where I really struggle interacting with people, especially confrontations. So being a glorified cashier in the front end of Walmart during November to December was not the best place for me, and I quit my job only after a month or so, and felt like a failure for multiple years until now, when at 22, I'm only just now starting to find my footing, and I realize it doesn't have to look the same as other people my age. I don't have a 9-to-5, I can't drive, and live in small town middle America, so that's kind of an important requirement. But I've started doing art from home. While I've just started and don't know how successful it'll actually be, just starting in general has made me feel a lot better about my future and my ability in doing things. But honestly, I don't think I would be thriving like I am if my parents hadn't gotten divorced when I turned about 18. They waited until me and my brother were adults, so custody wouldn't be an issue, and we ourselves could decide where we wanted to go. Even though I love my dad, and know he loves me a lot too, he's just always struggled to show it, and the pressure he put on me, knowingly or not, only made me even more scared of failure. Something I'm still worried about, because I've failed every other thing I've ever tried. The first ever festival I tried selling at, I failed. I failed at driving. I failed at a job, and it made me so scared to even try. So for years I didn't. Only after moving and getting settled again, I feel like I'm finally in a place to start trying things again. And even though part of me wants to stop, just so I don't end up putting all of this time and effort into another failure, even just me trying to do the things I like doing again, like art, has made a world of difference. Although I never like hyping up myself and saying I'm in a good mental space, because I feel like that always jinxes it. But I got off track there again. But it kind of makes sense, as my dynamic with my father and this cat go hand in hand, as he was the reason I couldn't bring him inside. I also saw, despite that action, which I considered being mean to Uno, he still did love that cat and cared for him, which is something I've been able to take away about our relationship. He is strict in the ways he prefers to view the world, but still loves me, flaws and all. but again, doesn't really know how to show it. But with him not being a stressful presence in my life, our relationship has gotten much better over time. With me as an adult, I can see him more as a fellow struggling person instead of this overbearing authority figure. And I feel like that revelation of learning to just see and treat my parents as people and friends has really helped my relationship with them be more positive and pleasant. It's why I never understood people who don't like their kids to treat them like friends. And my dad was almost sort of that way too. Like, he hated it when I called him bro or dude. And he would say the classic dad line of quote unquote, I'm not your dude, I'm your dad. But as soon as he discovered that was just part of my vocabulary and that I couldn't stop myself and it actually meant that I was relaxed enough to be casual, but honestly, he's better as my dude than my dad. I prefer that relationship with him anyways. Okay, enough yapping about my home life. This painting, and I think this little series of cat people is done. I'm gonna have to come up with some other prompt for whatever I do next, but I still have plenty of wall space to fill, so I plan to continue doing even more canvas paintings, and I'm not entirely sure when it's gonna end up being done.